Thank you for joining us for Working Through the Word, a ministry of the Richmond Church of Christ. Let's join our pulpit minister, Mike Johnson, as he brings today's lesson.
Open up to Revelation chapter 2, and that will be our text in a few minutes, the first 7 verses. Our theme today is love. We're on Connect Group Sunday this year. We are discussing the fruit of the Spirit. And we begin with love, perfect one, given Valentine's Day that is just around the corner. And as we think about love, we noticed this morning 8 different words that help us to understand what it means when John said, love one another. And so our discussion this morning was directed toward loving each other. Tonight, we're going to, as the other groups at least had the material and they did it in some form or in some way, I want us to look at another side to this. And to do that, I want to begin this way. I want you to think back to the phrase, you've heard it before, right? You don't ever really get over your first love. Now, I don't know what that was about, Helen, but, you, when you poked him, I thought you meant, yeah, Joe, you ain't got over yours yet. And you hadn't gotten over yours either, so that's good. All right, let's think about that for a minute. Now, contrast that. You never really get over your first love. Contrast that with the statement here that said, you have left your first love. Now, there's something going on here. If what we always say, you never get over your first love, then how is it possible that someone can leave their first love? So I want to think about that concept for a few minutes. Let's go this way. Let's think about what we mean by first love. Now, probably all of us in some way or another think of it as in those teenage years or early 20s, but probably the teenage years, when there was that butterfly thing in your stomach. And the first one that got you, the first one that you just sort of remember, the first one that caused those butterflies to run around. Okay? But in a deeper sense, because more than likely that wasn't really love. That was just an intense form of like. But then there was that time when the one got you. And all of a sudden, all those butterflies, they got in formation. And they started flying together. Because this is just right. And that is your first real love. But let's get a little more mundane than that. Do you remember the first car that you just really loved? Is there an old car that you wish to this day that you had back? I wish I had back my 1969 Cadillac Coupe de Ville with a 472 4-barrel engine. I could fit 8 college students in that sucker. And I did it. White leather interior, black carpet, an aqua blue color. And while you drove it, the gas gauge went like this. That's why we had to get rid of it. About a year and a half ago, I was driving through Lexington and stopped and took a picture. I thought I had seen my car. It's sitting up there at a garage. I took a picture of it, sent it to Rebecca, gave her the cold sweats. She probably thought I was looking to buy it. Probably wasn't my car. How about that first job that you had that you just really loved? Maybe you're still doing it, but you have this thing in your head about that first one. There's something about it that's just drawing you back. Or maybe that first place that you lived that just connected. When I talk about the first love, no matter to what you apply it, in a mundane way, to things and places and ideas, or to a very real, solid thing like our relationships, we all know what it means, don't we? What did you do? Whether it was the mundane or the real. What did it do to you? How did you feel? How did you act? Well, you probably couldn't wait to see them, or to drive the car, or to be in that place. You wanted to look for them all the time. You were thinking about them. It seems like all through the day, you're just thinking about it. Maybe you have some routines that you just change because I want to be with the first love. And even though you're a busy person, you start changing or looking in your schedule and going, where can I fit this thing in? Where can I go for this first love? And these are all of the things and many more that you could think of that you would do for that first love. It's not that it was better. Probably wasn't. It's certainly not best. But it was first. And in those physical things, I think we all know what is the point and how we felt and what it did to us and what we did because. But I want to apply that to this situation. The Ephesian church had left their first love. But now, you can't leave a first love till you have a first love. So in order to understand leaving, we got to talk about having. And I want you to go into the text with me. And I want you, by looking at how John described the Ephesian church, how we can understand their first love. Now, a couple of things by way of background info that's pretty cool to me. There's plenty of it. I did a lot of reading on the book, on the church at Ephesus. But Ephesus, geographically, is the closest city to the island of Patmos, where John was writing. And this letter was written to 7 churches, this letter of Revelation. You see these 7 churches in chapters 2 and 3. Well, the way those cities are set up, if you go to Ephesus, and then you start going to all the other churches in a ring, you get that kind of a look, and then back to Ephesus. Notice what he says in verse 2, or verse 1, that is. These things says he who holds the 7 stars in his right hand. One artist drew a picture of John holding a necklace in his hand of 7 stars, representing the 7 churches, where you start at Ephesus and take a circuit. John's writing to these people. Ephesus was the primary city of the province, even though it was not the capital. Pergamum was the capital, but Ephesus was the effective capital. It's where everything was, the center of everything they were doing, including, if you remember, the temple of Diana. They were a people who were worshiping the Greek gods. If you want to go back sometime and read about Ephesus in Acts 18, 19, 20, it's the background for what I want to tell you, what I think might be going on in this passage. Paul went there and he found some of those disciples. He had been there 2 times, first on his second missionary journey, and then on his third. He stayed a total of 3 years in Ephesus. He was there longer than any other place he'd ever been. And he encountered a group of people who had worshiped all kinds of idol gods, but they also were the ones who, when confronted with truth, burned all of their books. Now, notice what's going on. What is this Ephesus church? Maybe we could say, what is their reputation in the sight of God? All right? Verse 3, I know your works. They were an active church. I know your labor. They were an intense church. They actively, intensely were working. I know your patience. They could handle, apparently, whatever came their way. You cannot bear those who are evil. They were a confrontational church. Someone teaching error, not going to stand for it. They learned that in the encounters with the God worshiping people of Diana of the Ephesians. We're not going to stomach that anymore. You tested those who say they are apostles and they are not. You found them to be liars. They were a church that put to the test anybody who made a claim, and they would say, we're going to find out whether you're telling the truth or not. You persevered. You have patience. If I were to stop right there, would you say I'd like to be in a church like that? I would. And then I see the next phrase, and you have not grown weary. Well, this is a church that I would like to be. Only 2 churches of the 7 did we find nothing bad at all to say. And in this case, this one thing is said. But look at all the good things he said. And with all the good that Jesus said through John to the church at Ephesus, that's who they were. Now, how then, if I see a church like that, how could Jesus come back and say, you left your first love? Sounds like to me they're still with their first love. It sounds like to me they're still heavily involved in it. Now, I have an opinion in identifying first love. I think it may be related to evangelism. Some of the first things we read about with the Ephesians was evangelistic in nature. When when Paul came on the scene, Apollos was on the scene as well, and they had to confront him, Aquila and Priscilla, teach him the truth more perfectly. In Acts 19, he found some people who had been baptized under John, didn't know anything about the Spirit, and he taught them more perfectly. And all of a sudden, we see the church beginning to grow. I think it may be an evangelistic attitude. I know this. This was a busy church. We were in Connect group today talking about this very idea. We're a busy church at Richmond. I mean, if you look in our work, our calendar, and our plans, we're a busy church. I've pushed for that for a long time. Elders and I have talked for years. We want to make sure that we are doing enough that everybody finds something to do, while admitting that we don't expect everybody to do all of it. But if we're only going to do 2 or 3 things, we're going to leave out some people who just don't fit the 2 or 3. But if we do 100, we're going to be busy. And that busyness is also going to create the mentality in some people of, oh, I wish I could do more. There's so much good going on. So Ephesus was busy. So how can this busy church have been told you've left your first love? Well, I want to look at it as that final phrase in verse 3. You have not become weary. Chris asked earlier in the Connect group, is this word weary, how is it connected to Galatians 6 and verse 9, weary? Where Paul wrote and said, do not grow weary in well-doing. Well, the word in Galatians is don't be discouraged. Don't get overwhelmed. Take care of yourself. When you're doing good and you never see any results come and you think you're just throwing stuff, just don't get weary, But this word is a word that means physically tired. Just physically tired. Now, I don't know how great a difference it is, but here's one thing I see. The only thing right now, and you're welcome to have a different feeling, I'd love to hear an alternative view. How could I see this busy church leaving first love? And I think it is because they were busy but not engaged. Busy but not engaged. So when they first learned and they first started, they were people who learned about the Lord. They saw the difference between what they were being taught and what they saw all around them in these idol gods and all this false teaching. So they could see all of that. And when they decided that's going to be what I'm doing, that's buying in to their first love. When the gospel came to them and they said, that's what I want. Now for just a minute. Do you remember the day, if not the exact day, the day when you became a Christian? What were the thoughts that you had in your head? How did you feel? What was your intention? Weren't you all in? I mean, we were all in. I was all in. I was going to convert the whole world. It started out with a peace that said, you know what, if you die tonight, you're fine. But like a first love, over time, it becomes sort of routine. This is what we do. This is what we do all the time. At this time I go there, at this time I go there, I do this, and it becomes routine. Actively, did they leave their first love? I don't think so. It looks like to me they're still doing all the right things. But Jesus is concerned that they do the right things while fully engaged in them. Is there a road that you drive every day to work? And you just know it proverbially like the back of your hand. In fact, you know it so well that sometime on the journey you go, oh, did I miss that traffic light? I've just been driving. I haven't hit anybody. As far as I know, I haven't driven off the road. Tom Brown cracked me up. Tom Brown cracked me up 3 or 4 years ago. I was taking him somewhere and he said, you know those things on the side of the road that make a sound when you ride on them? Rumble strips? Yeah, that's it. He said, I like those things. And then he said, and I'm glad they're on both sides of the road. He cracked me up. That's right about the time that Shane and I talked and Jack talked, and we decided, probably no keys, right, Harold? And so we took care of that situation. Sometimes we just drive a road and we're not really engaged. You know what I mean by the routine becomes such that we can just do something, and it's so routine that we don't really think about it. I think that's what John is saying. I think that's what Jesus' accusation is. I'm not upset with you for doing all the stuff, but you're not really engaged in it. That's the message we need to hear. We can leave our first love without ever changing what we're doing. It just so happens we disengage our minds. Now the question is, how do we get it back? How do you go back and get that same first love response? What it does to you, how you feel, how you think, how you act. How do you go back and get that? Well, here's what Jesus says. Number one, remember how it was. Verse 5, remember from where you have fallen. Remember how it was. Go back and think about how it used to be. Congregationally, we should go back and think about those of us who have been here over periods of time, because like in regular everyday life, churches have it too. Times of up and down and up and down. And we go back to one of those up times. Remember how it was. What was going on then? How were we responding? What were we talking about? How were we engaged? Remember how it was. Number two, repent for how it is. Repent and do the first works. Repent and do the first works. Remember how it was. Repent for how it is, and resolve to make how it was, how it is again. Do the first works. Now, when I read this list of who they were, what they were doing, I don't know what they could change. Action-wise, I don't see what they could change. But he said, do the first works. It's an attitude and a mental issue. There's a big difference when we say that we are working our way to heaven, meaning I'm checking all the boxes, I'm doing all I can, it's almost like it's all on me. And there's a whole different mentality that says, I am working the works of God. Meaning, He's already done the work. Now I'm just accepting it, and I am living the fact that He's already done all of that. And in response to His goodness and His love for me, this is what I'm going to do. So, John said, love one another. And Jesus said, through John to Ephesus, you left your first love. If in fact we love each other with good actions, but not engaged with each other, then Jesus is telling us as a church, remember, repent, and resolve. Make how it was, how it is again. And in so doing, we go back to the first love. Now, I'm not going to assume anybody is like me, but maybe in a way you are. Many times I have thought, I wish that I could have that first feeling again. Those first few days of the newness of Christianity, the newness of my life with Jesus. I wish I could have that again. Well, then I realize I have something better. Now I have a depth, a connection, a comfort. Isn't that just like the relationship of a good marriage? No, you don't have the same butterflies from those first days and months and years. But what you have is a relationship that has survived difficulties, thrived in successes, grown deeper, broader, higher. And isn't this better than that? Because this incorporated that. Let's just keep doing what we're doing, but make sure that we're engaged. Make sure that we're mentally there. Make sure that we're not in danger of leaving our first love. Most of the time, when we have an invitation song, we're singing to ourselves. I mean, admit it, we are. Most of us say, I need to be better. Most of us want to be better. I dare say all of us want to improve in some way. And so while we might think an invitation song is for somebody who's not right, needs to get right, really, it's a song we all sing to ourselves through encouragement of each other that we all want to be better anyway. And so as we sing that song now, let that be our emphasis. I want to be better. And through our singing, I'm encouraging you and you're encouraging me. And we are encouraging each other to be better, to be more engaged in love for God and each other. Let's stand and sing together.
We hope that you enjoyed today's broadcast, brought to you by the Richmond Church of Christ. We are located at 1500 Lancaster Road in Richmond, Kentucky. We meet at 9 a.m. each Sunday morning for Bible class, followed by our morning worship service held at 10 a.m. Our Sunday evening service is held at 6 p.m. Our midweek Bible study is held on Wednesday at 7 p.m. If you are in the area, we would love to have you as our honored guest. Thanks for listening.